Chapter 14. Phase 2.
"I don't care who thought of it. This needs to stop," growled Armand.
He frowned as he looked over the sea of people across the yard of the police station. Bea just laughed. "Why don't you have a soda and calm down, detective?"
"Calm down?"
Armand's voice became dangerously low as he looked at Bea. I grabbed him by the arm, pulling him away from her. "I wanted to talk to you," I chirped in an effort to distract him, leading the detective through the crowd to try and find a quieter place.
"I got your message," he said dryly. "I know what you're doing."
"What am I doing?" I asked innocently.
"You were trying to distract me from the chaos you have created,"
he grumbled, patting his pocket for a cigarette. When he came up empty, he scowled further. "Actually, I wanted to talk about Jackson's case," I began, but Armand cut me off.
"You know I can't discuss the investigation with you," he reiterated, annoyed I was pursuing the subject.
"True," I conceded. "However, I found out something significant. Or it could be significant." Armand looked like he would rather bite off his tongue than ask, but he ended up questioning,
"What is it?"
"The apricots in the photo I happened to accidentally see from your case file, are they the food the poison was in?" "If so, those apricots didn't come from Grubb's farm," I proudly stated.
"How do you know?"
a disbelieving Armand inquired. "They had stickers on them from the food mart," I pertly replied. "Grubb's farm doesn't use stickers. However, all store-bought produce has stickers on them. Those particular stickers are from the food mart right here in town."
"How can you know the apricots are from the food mart?"
Armand crossed his arms, looking down at me. "I recognize the stickers," I shrugged. "You are more than welcome to check it out for yourself."
"I will," affirmed Armand. "Not that I'm confirming the apricots had poison in them, or Bart died by poison."
I gave the detective a reprimanding look. "I was at the station when the police labs came back. I know Bart was poisoned." Armand let out something akin to a growl.
"This whole thing is one big mess."
"What motive does the chief have for Bart's murder?" I wondered, half thinking to myself, half talking aloud to Armand. "He has to think there is a reason why Jackson might be the killer."
"I honestly don't know," admitted a reluctant Armand. "I think he just added up the evidence and a 2 + 2 = 5 equation."
"Then you don't believe Jackson is guilty either," I said softly.
"No, I don't believe so," sighed Armand. "However, there isn't much I can do about the situation. I'm not privy to the investigation."
"Not true," I argued. "You can keep digging into what happened. I'm not going to give up, and you shouldn't either." With that parting shot, I walked away. Munching on the last of my cooling burger, I went back to my car. I needed a plan. As far as I was concerned, I might believe some of what the suspects had said, but that didn't mean they were off the hook. I was going to think about while I got a few chores done at the Happy Camper Resort. Once back, I changed into some old clothes. Taking Cookie and Cupcake with me, we proceeded down to the dock to try to sand down the wood. I had a bunch of extension cords which would reach the leaning kayak shack. Hopefully, the electrical outlet still worked. Unlocking the kayak shack was difficult. The lock had rusted shut, and it took soaking the thing in oil before the key would finally turn. I looked into the dim and musty interior, which housed ancient canoes, kayaks, and boating paraphernalia. As I had feared, the life jackets had been turned into homes for various rodents and insects over the years. Most of the stuff would need to be junked and replaced. Likely the entire building needed to be rebuilt. The way it was leaning, it looked like a good stiff wind would easily make the shack fall over. Grimacing, I plugged in the extension cords and headed for the dock with my sander. I had bought the cheapest one at the handy hardware store in town because I didn't intend to use it beyond sanding down a few things. The dock was first and foremost on my list. Once it was sanded, I had a couple of cans full of stain for it and the new boardwalk surrounding the office. 3 hours later, Cookie and Cupcake happily puffed, watching the boaters and other wildlife from a spot in the shade of a tree. As for me, I was heartily sick of sanding in this afternoon sun. My knees hurt, my hands felt like they could vibrate all on their own, my lungs were choking on the dust even with the protective dust mask, and my shoulders hurt from the strain of pushing the small sander around. I was on my last patch of sandpaper, leaning over the edge, trying to reach the very last spot, when my hand slipped. I fell onto my stomach on the dock, my hand hanging over empty air. With a glunk, the sander fell into the water. Immediately, I heard a loud popping noise behind me, coming from the kayak shack. With a sinking feeling in my stomach, I quickly sat up, looking toward the shack. It appeared okay. I didn't see any fire or smoke, which was a good sign. Carefully getting up, I went to the shack, looking inside the dim interior. It smelled awful inside, even worse than the mustiness of when I had first opened the shack up. Acidic and something distinctly electrical reached my nose. I flicked on the light switch, but nothing happened. Taking out my phone, I switched on the flashlight app so I could better see. The outlet where I had plugged in the sander was black, with more black soot trailing up the wall. I grabbed the plug and pulled out the extension cord. Great, I muttered. Just great. Not only had I killed the sander, possibly the extension cords, but the hydro to the shack was now in question. I would just have to add it to the many things on my list to repair. Hopefully my blunder hadn't affected any electrical on the rest of the campground. Tugging on the extension cords, I pulled the sander out of the water. Cookie and Cupcake barked ecstatically as they recognized a person walking down the trail toward us. "Having a problem?" Conrad joined me, frowning at the dripping sander. "That's not good." "No," I sighed, "it's not. The only good thing about it is I managed to finish sanding the dock." Conrad inspected the dock. "You did a good job. Nice and smooth." "Thank you." I had a half smile. "I came by to tell you what I learned from Jepson," started Conrad, fingering one of his suspenders. "There have been a rash of lawsuits when it comes to Bart. Seems like he was being sued by his business partner Maurice and his landlord Horace. Then Bart was suing Tacky Young from the White Oaks Resort. Bart has done little more than file the lawsuit before his death." "This could add up to a lot of lawyer fees," I stated dryly. "Bart was countersuing Maurice. He didn't like the split equation of the business Maurice was proposing. Maurice wanted a 50-50 split, but Bart wanted more of a 70-30 split in his own favor. He was dragging the process out. In the meanwhile, Bart wasn't paying any rent to the landlord and was fighting an eviction order." Conrad shook his head. "What a mess he was in. Bart kept stalling the lawsuits every time something didn't go his way. He pleaded all sorts of made-up medical issues and had histrionics in court. Everyone was starting to reach a breaking point. If you ask me, I think either Horace or Maurice could easily have done it just to get the whole thing over with. Bart had already stretched out the court cases past a year, and it doesn't look like they were going to wrap up anytime soon." "Then it looks like most of my suspects are still suspects," I groaned. "It would appear so," agreed an unhelpful Conrad. "Well, I'm going back to the office. If you need me, you know where to find me." "Thank you, Conrad," I replied before setting the useless sander back in the kayak shack. I shut the door, locking it. What I needed was a plan, a way to draw out the murderer. However, I wasn't certain how to go about it. Taking the two bossies for a walk, I aimlessly wandered, trying to think of what to do. Cupcake and Cookie pulled me along, heading straight to Bee's camper. Bee was outside, her feet up and a book in her hand. Once she saw me, she set the novel down with a smile. "How was your talk to the good detective?" "When I was done my shift at the protest, I went looking for you, but you were already gone." I had decided to sand the dock and collect my thoughts. I had a seat in one of her lawn chairs, suddenly glad Cookie and Cupcake had brought me to Bee. She was exactly the person I needed to talk to. Cookie gave me a knowing look. I gave her and Cupcake a pat, thinking they couldn't possibly read minds. "You are not answering the question," cried Bee, her eyes sparkling in delight. "I can see a few sparks between you and Armand." I rolled my eyes. "Of friction, maybe. He's very arrogant and irritating." "He's been demoted for a little while. It tends to get to a man who is proud of his position in the world," noted Bee as she took a sip of coffee. "Would you like something to drink?" "Thank you, but no," I refused. "I came by for a different reason. I would like your opinion. Right now there are just too many suspects in Bart's death, and I want to reduce the number." "I thought all this questioning was to reduce the suspects on our list," frowned Bee. "If anything, I have expanded the suspect pool," I moaned. "I'm adding Melinda since she lied to us. Perhaps she likes Tristan enough to kill for him. A little extreme, I'll admit, but possible." "Melinda has always been a bit too focused and determined to get what she wants," Bee nodded in agreement. "What do you plan on doing?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I would like to somehow coerce one of them into admitting their guilt, but I'm not sure how. I was hoping you might have an idea." Bee pursed her lips, thinking. She glanced at the book in front of her, drawing on an idea from her extensive reading of mystery novels. "In the double-cross caper, the detective used a false clue. He told all the suspects something was going to happen, but it really wasn't. The detective was hoping to see if any of his suspects would take action by revisiting the crime scene. When only one suspect did, the detective knew who the murderer was. How would it work for us? I wondered, mulling over the idea. Maybe if we do it as a group. Each of us take on a suspect, letting it slip to the suspects we think a vital clue was left behind at the Tasty Treats bakery. We'll be vague and just drop it into the conversation. Bea warmed up to the idea, enthusiasm gathering in her voice. Then someone can do a stakeout. They will watch the bakery to see who comes hunting to remove the incriminating evidence. Whoever does must be our guilty party. It could work, I nodded, liking the plan. However, the bakery is off limits. The police have it still as a crime scene. None of us are going to break in, explained Bea. We just sit out front and observe what happens. If one of our suspects does break into the bakery, we'll call the cops. Then the police will have the suspect in hand, who will have some explaining to do. It's a well-known fact the guilty person usually revisits the crime scene. Why? I asked, curious. If I committed a crime, I think I would like to be as far away as possible. Some criminals don't think they'll get caught, and they want to watch what the police find out about them, answered Bea. Others are worried they might get caught and want to know just exactly what the police know. I guess they figure if the police find out too much, then they will flee. Usually by then it's too late, and they get arrested. Criminals don't always make very good decisions. I think it's because they are usually anxious or arrogant. Either emotion isn't a good one to make choices with. I like the idea, I admitted. I'm not a particularly good liar, though. I'm not sure I could keep a straight face and tell someone the police left a clue behind. What if they started asking questions? And what if they asked what the clue was or how I knew about it? You don't need to worry about it, assured Bea, patting my hand. You can't be the one to do the task. Why not? I questioned, a little affronted. Sure, I wasn't a great liar, but I could fudge the truth a little if the situation warranted it. Everyone knows you were investigating Bart's death. Bea shook her head. You've already questioned the suspects, and you can't just tell them they may have forgotten a clue at the crime scene without them getting suspicious. No, you let me and the others take care of this. She did have a point, I had to admit to myself. Then, when should we do it? Fergie could leave town at any time. Tomorrow, first thing in the morning, decided Bea. I'll organize it, and you can stake out the Tasty Treats bakery. Of course, we need more than just you there. Perhaps a few people can watch the bakery for any of our suspects. I think Tawny's granddaughter has some of those walkie-talkie things we can use to communicate. I'll ask her tomorrow. I grinned at Bea. This could work. Of course it could, Bea smiled back. You just leave it in my capable hands. I'll let you know when to begin your watch at the front of the bakery. Okay, I decided Bea had it under control. Wishing her a good night, Cupcake, Cookie, and I walked back to my trailer. We had a late snack together. Afterward, I had a shower, and then we all curled straight into bed. The next day was clear and cool in the morning. However, the weather forecast spoke of building heat and possible showers later in the day. I checked on Don Miller and his crew, who were busy fixing the hole in the clubhouse roof. A picnic table had been moved, so it was beside the building. Someone had put up an umbrella with it, and atop of the table was a cheery tablecloth weighed down with a couple of rocks. I gave it a distracted look. Dawn was pulling an extension cord out of the van. Some old lady says she's bringing us lemonade and cookies for our lunch. That's nice of her. I wondered which happy camper resident it was. I could think of a number of old ladies who fit the description. How's it going? Do you need anything? Already tore off the damaged part of the roof, grunted Don. Working on shoring up a few areas when we lay down a repair. Roof will look a little odd with one part not as faded as the rest, but it will keep out water. Good, I said in relief. As long as it keeps the inside dry, I'm happy. I'm planning on having this done today. Tomorrow we can start on the office. Don headed for the ladder. When you want my nephew to come for the electrical? I thought about the kayak shack and all of the sites which needed electrical updating. Whenever he's available? I'm busy today, but any time after is good. Don nodded. I'll give him your number. His name is Evan. Good kid. Smart and knows his stuff. Great, I managed to smile. All I could see was dollar signs, but it was necessary to spend to update the electrical at the camping lots. The last thing I needed was for someone to plug in their camper and have a repeat of what had happened to me at the kayak shack. I couldn't afford to replace someone's camper because the electrical outlets were old and dangerous. I reminded myself that I had garnered a 10% discount for having hired Evan Miller. With a wave, I left the roofers to their work and headed for the dock. Tying Cupcake and Cookie in the shade so they could explore at their heart's delight, I opened the kayak shack to retrieve the painting supplies and stain I had stashed there overnight. Hours later, in the heat of the day, it was starting to wear on me, and the sun climbed higher into the sky. The breeze, which had been so nice in the morning, left, leaving the air heavy and muggy. I hoped the stain would dry before any rain came. I would probably get a sunburn. With a flick of the paintbrush, I looked at my progress. The dock looked great. I was proud of the work I had done. All it needed was to get the last patch of wood where I was sitting. That was the point. I suddenly realized my mistake. I had stained myself into a corner at the end of the dock. The lake water surrounded me, and the beach was a wet, stained dock away. I couldn't go across the dock without making marks in the stain. Huffing with annoyance, I stood, staining around my feet as best I could. Setting the brush on top of the can, I resigned myself to getting wet. Thankfully, a wooden ladder had been built onto the end of the dock. I was able to stain the last patches and head into the water with a closed can of stain and a paintbrush held high in the air as I paddled to the shore. Cookie barked excitedly at me while Cupcake whined for my safety as I came out of the water, clothes dripping.
"Wow, is there anything you don't do?" an awed voice asked.